So next up, I want to mask the robot. So let's just zoom in over here. I want to mask the robot so that when it's behind the tree, its shoulder isn't still in front. So basically we need to create a mask around this tree to make it look as though the robot is actually behind it. So it should only be around about 16 frames, I think. I'll just go through. So I'll go through one frame at a time until the robot is no longer behind the tree. So probably around about 11 frames, but I'll go with 16 just to be safe. And to set this up, we're going to need to go to the motion tracker. So over to the motion tracker, and in the motion tracker, we're going to change from the tracking mode to the mask mode, and then we'll choose add. And we'll choose a starting shape. Circle's fine. If we zoom out, you can see it's created this circle mask for us at the bottom corner. I'm just going to turn off lock the viewport so I can move the viewport around. I'm going to move this now over the tree. And the idea is we're just going to modify this shape until it fits around the tree. And we can rotate these as well. And if you want to insert more, you can just control click a point and then move those around. And if you want to change the type, it's just like when we're in the animation editor, you can choose the point, right click, and set the handle type to auto. Then it will automatically change as you move it around. So we'll do that for all of them. Set them to auto, just by pressing A to select them all, right click, set handle type, and then auto. Alright, so we'll just create a rough shape. I'll continue, adding points so I get the shape that I want. And it doesn't have to be too precise, because we're going to modify the actual mask in the compositor afterwards. So it doesn't matter if you're a little bit further out, but you don't want to be sort of inside of the object. Alright, so that should be fine. We don't need to cover all of this area over here necessarily, I don't think, but just to be safe, we'll bring it out a little bit and I'll scale this up a little bit as well. Maybe rotate this one down. So there we go, there's the rough sort of shape. That'll do. Now, we don't want to have to move this manually on every single frame. That'll be a bit of a pain in the neck. What we want to do instead is parent this mask to one of the trackers that we've got. Now, if we parent to a tracker that's a distance away like this one, so for example, if I press A to select all of the points, and then shift click on this tracker and press Control P, that's going to parent all of these points to this tracker. Now the problem with this is, because this is a different distance away from the camera than the tree, it's not going to sort of stay stuck to the tree, it's going to move at a different speed. So let's just play this back to demonstrate that. So as I come forward now, it's actually moving further away from the tree, just because of that difference in distance between the tracker on the pavement and the actual location of the tree in real life. So instead of doing that, I'm going to select them all again, shift click this and press Alt P to unparent, and now when I move forward, it's no longer going to be stuck to this tracker. What I'm going to do instead is create new tracking markers. Let's just go full screen on this tree so that it can stick to it more accurately. So Control click here, make sure we go to the tracking mode again, and then Control click a few different points on the tree. 3 should be fine, I think. Maybe we'll put one over here as well. So we select all 4 of these now. We need to go to the tracking settings, because we've got some quite close to the edge of the screen. We need to turn this margin down. So I'm going to Alt left click in the margin so that whatever I enter in here will affect all of the selected trackers. And I'll just put 0. I just want to turn on as well the search area. I think I'm going to want to turn these down a little bit for each of these. Okay, and then with them all selected still, I'm going to do Alt right arrow. So it's going to track forward. Make sure we're on frame 1, and then Alt right arrow. And some of them didn't, the top one didn't work. I'll worry about that afterwards. I'll just go forward 10 frames. If you look at the bottom here, it's showing you which frame number we're on. So that should be fine. We only need 10, I've done 16. So I'll go back to the first frame. And this one's not working because the pattern area is partially outside of the image. So just scale it down. And I'll try again. There we go, that's tracking now. I'll take this forward about the same amount of frames, so 16 frames. And we'll go back to the mask mode. Go back to frame 1. And now I'm going to parent the points on the mask to the closest tracker. So I'm going to select this point and this point, and then I'll select this tracker. I'll do Control P. And now I'm going to do the same. I'm going to select this one, and then shift click, make sure we deselect all the other points and trackers. So choose this one, shift click on this tracker, Control P, so that's been parented to that one. This one down here, and this one as well. And then shift click on the tracker, Control P. And then finally we've got a point over here. I'll select this one, and then shift click on this tracker and Control P. And now when we go forward, we're going to get a much more accurate mask. You may still need to make a few little amendments. And these points are animatable as well. And this is useful because, say for example, at some point, the robot walks in front of the tree. You don't want the mask to still be here. It's not going to happen in this video, but if you were doing a scene where you masked an object and then your 3D object came from behind it to in front of it, if the mask is still there and the object is in front of it, it's still going to be masked out and appear to be behind it. So it's important to be able to animate these points so that you can move them out of the way if you want to, or make small amendments if the markers aren't quite giving the right result. Alright, so on frame 1, I'm going to select all of these points on the mask, making sure I'm in mask mode. Press A, and I'll press I to insert a keyframe. So press I, and then if we move forward, but we'll come to this frame 16 now. I'll press I to add another keyframe, and then we'll move forward a few frames, and we'll just drag it out of the way. So it's off the screen completely, and we'll press I to add another keyframe. You'll see it will animate out of the screen once we've finished with it, just to be safe. And if you don't want it to sort of gradually go like that, what we could do is we could do it all on one frame. So let me just bring up the dope sheet, and then we'll change the dope sheet into the mask mode. And now we can see we've got the 3 keyframes that we've just created, or the 3 shape keys rather, that we've just created for this mask. So if I want it to immediately jump off of the screen, we can bypass all of this area by doing it in one frame. So let's zoom in a little bit. And all I'm going to do is take this keyframe I've created on frame 23, put it to frame 17, and then as soon as it goes on to frame 17, we're going to get it immediately off the screen so it won't affect any other 3D objects in this area. So with that done, we'll go across to the compositor and start making use of this. So currently, the alpha over node is set with a factor of 1, which basically means that this is going to work for the entire image. So if I go back to frame 1, where the robot is in front of the tree, this is because the factor is set to 1. Now, I need the factor to be 0 where the tree is, or in other words, the input needs to be black where the tree is and white everywhere else. Let's bring in the mask we've just created using Shift A, search for a mask node, and then we'll choose the mask that we've created. There's only one. And if we look at this, Control Shift click on it, you'll see we've got the white area here and the rest of the image is black. We wanted vice versa, so if we plug this in to the factor now, Control Shift click on this, you'll see we're getting the robot only appear where the tree is, which is the opposite to what we want. So we do Shift A, search for an invert node, drop that on there, and now the robot is behind the tree. And the alpha over is working for the rest of the image, just not where the tree is. But the problem is, we've got this halo around the edge of the tree, because if you remember, going to the mask node in the image editor, the mask isn't flush up to the side of the tree. So we need to fix this by creating another mask and then limiting that mask to just this mask's area. So Shift A, under the matte section, we've got various different keying nodes. And a keying node is just a node that's going to create a mask based on some aspect of the image. For example, the color, or the luminance, or the difference in colour. We're just going to go with the general colour key, because this tree is obviously all one colour, it's just green. So let's plug in the image into here, and I need to set the colour that I want to create a mask for. So I'm going to hover over the key colour, press E to bring up the eyedropper. I'm going to choose green on the tree. I don't want it to be the brightest green, and I don't want it to be the darkest green. I want it to be somewhere in the middle. So maybe go with this area here. And then if we go to the image, we can see, if we zoom in, it's starting to delete areas of that green. So it's basically selecting areas of green which are within the hue, saturation and value threshold that we set here. So if I increase the hue, it's going to get rid of more areas of green, or the saturation, like so, until we've got the tree selected. So let's just go to the mask view. So we'll Control-Shift-Click on the mask output, and now we can see more easily what's happening. Just want to tweak these values, until the tree is black. So let's turn up the hue a little bit, turn up the saturation, and just tweak these values until you've got a good section of the tree selected where the robot is going to be visible. And you might find there are going to be areas that you can't select very well. So you can see, for example, here, we've got this white area, and that's because in the original image, if we click, you see we've got a feather. So we can't select that. Now, it's not an issue because the robot is never going to be in that area of the tree. But if you do run into that situation in future, you can just create another mask like we've created this one, and then add that mask to this one so that that will always be covered as well. So let's go back over here. We've got the mask set up now. So I'm going to plug this. Let's just get rid of the invert node. We'll plug this mask into the factor of the alpha over. And if we look at the result, you can see we've now got, we'll turn off that mask view as well, turn it back to standard. You can see we've no longer got that halo. It's created this other mask, but the problem now is there are other areas of the image which are green, so the robot is also being masked out there as well. So all we need to do is limit the mask we've just created to only appear in the original mask's location. Now that's quite straightforward. All we'll do Shift-A, we'll search this time for a mix node, and I want to say where this mask is white, use this colour key. So in other words, where it's white on a mix node, it's 1, it's going to use the bottom socket. So I'll plug this mask in here. Let's plug this in. And I'll say top socket, let's make that red. And I'll plug the matte into the bottom one. And now you can see we've got the mask only appearing in this area as controlled by the areas of white in this mask. So I'll set the top socket back to white, turn the saturation all the way down, and now we've got a mask that we can plug into the alpha over. So plug that in, go back to this node, and now you can see we've got the robot masked out behind the tree, but the rest of the image isn't affected, so we're not getting parts of the robot deleted where we didn't want to. Now we can see here that it's not quite right, so at this point we can go back over here and just start tweaking these values until we get the effect we want. Maybe something like this. And all I'm going to do now is step through to make sure the robot doesn't appear on any frames. So I'll go one frame at a time, just to make sure the robot is only appearing outside of that tree. So that's looking pretty good. The last thing I'm going to do is get rid of some of this blockiness. I mean, it's not too important because if you look at the distance away we are, it's quite a long way away. But I'm going to, just to make it a little bit nicer, drop down, Shift-A, and we'll search for a dilate erode node. Drop that there, change this to feather, and maybe give it a value of something like 2. And that's just going to smooth out those blocky edges. So the next thing I'm going to do is put the audio from the video back in, and also just to integrate the robot a little bit better into the video footage, I'm going to add some audio footsteps as well.